Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Talent Game podcast. So, this episode is going to be all about speaking to a bunch of CEOs, figuring out what their job is and how they got there. Going round the virtual room, I'd love to hear some introductions. So, I'll hand it to Kim first. If you could go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, Jiangzhou, nice to be here. So my name is Kim Soares. I'm the founder and CEO and creative director at Social First, which is a Finnish gaming startup. Uh, I ended up in games being in love with games. My first console was Atari 2600, and I started playing on that one when I was 5 years old, and that was like 1979. I know you couldn't believe it watching my youthful appearances, but yeah, I've been gaming since the 70s. So yeah, ever since games have been my hobby, and since 2000 something, also my profession. But more on that later, I guess.
Yeah, nice. I love that. John, you put your hand up looking like Atari 2600 was your first console as well. Am
It,
I right?
it was, dude, but I was actually born in '87, so my first console wasn't Atari, but it was a hand-me-down. So, but yeah, it was my first experience. It was.
Well, John, whilst you're already talking, do you want to introduce yourself again for the second time on this podcast?
Yeah, apart from a collector of vintage consoles and hand-me-downs from elder cousins, I'm also the CEO of Turborilla. We're an action sports gaming studio, or focused gaming studio in Umeå, which is in the north of Sweden. The bulk of our history has been in mobile, and we've done over or close to, 250 million installs of our games on our IP called Mad Skills. So yeah, we make physics-based action sports games for people who like extreme sports, basically. You know, BMX, motocross, snow rally, all of that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Kate, over to you.
Hey, I'm Kate Booth. I'm CEO of a company called Studio Heft. We're actually very much a baby amongst this bunch. We're only in our first year, so we started last May. We're currently developing titles for a platform called the Oto, which is an audio player device that up until when we got involved, they would just, you essentially buy these like little cards. The idea is it gives young kids agencies to be able to pick their own content, and they can listen to their own audiobooks and have a little device that's made just for them. It's nice and robust, and you can actually see it just above my head here. And the content that we're making for it is much more interactive. So things like choose your own adventure in its most basic level, but also with lots of different tools that can be held up with the device. And the idea being that it's kind of play for something without just having a normal traditional screen or mobile device. I mean, absolutely love it. We've launched our first title. We've got 2 more coming out this year. And we're currently working out what our kind of long-term strategy is. We're essentially a collective of quite experienced creatives. We're quite unusual that we don't have a CTO. So we're made up of a writer, a game designer, an amazing audio composer, and myself. So for that, we're kind of completely platform agnostic, and we're actually intentionally starting to target the slightly more unusual platforms, which are really, really fun to be able to focus on, just like the creative bit of making games rather than having to, we're still working out a business strategy for that for it to be long-term sustainable. But so far it's going really, really well, and I'm loving it. We've got a great team.
Very, very cool. And from one brand new company to another, Nuno, could you round us out?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Joe. It's great to be here. I'm Nuno Leiria, founder and CEO of Nilo, which is a platform for young people to create games using generative AI. So imagine that you're in a browser with other players, multiplayer game, and you just say, "Hey, I would like Hello Kitty," and Hello Kitty appears, or "I would like Spider-Man," and you're just playing around because generative AI creates 3D models and animations and codes. And so what used to take a team of professionals days to create, now it takes a young person just a few minutes. And so it's a platform where you can just create games with friends, publish them, remix them, and yeah, that's what they're building. And it's not much older than Kate's. It's not even 2 years old, but it's A16Z and Supercell backed. So now we're, I think, 20 people. So yeah, that's what we're building. As for myself, I've been playing games and making games since I was 12. So worked on Fortnite, on Fable, and leading the optimization team for Real Engine 5. So games are my life.
Yeah, awesome, great. Well, thanks all for that. The question that I always start episodes with, I'll hand over. We'll go back the opposite way around. Nuno, I'd love to know what you playing right now. I assume lots of games with inside Nilo, but anything else?
Yes, that too. But one thing that surprised me is that the more time I spend making games, the less time I have to play games, which sounds obvious now, but yeah, it's an unfortunate side effect. But yeah, when I'm home and not traveling, I've been trying to finish Final Fantasy 16, God of War Ragnarok, and most recently I've been playing Expedition 33.
Awesome. How about you, Kate?
I'm playing a lot of mobile games at the moment. Mobile, I think, is my favorite platform to play on. I do love console, but I'm waiting for my next big title, and I'm bouncing between replaying the same Assassin's Creed franchise and GTA until the new one comes out. So, yeah, I've basically been really intentionally experimenting with every time I'm getting ads on mobile, actually downloading those games, and I've been sort of playing a little bit of research from professionally, but actually some really there's some really fantastic mobile games out there. Little Farm Story is one that I'm playing at the moment, which sounds really cheesy. It's actually it's very well designed. As I think they push the limits of quality and monetization, which is it's a nice example. So it's a little bit of a busman's holiday of churning through mobile games.
How about you, John?
So, mate, I've got 3 levels of gaming, and I think this is as a parent, it's how I can how much time I have to allocate. So I've got Pokemon trading card game, which is my go-to on a daily basis, playing multiple times a day within like 2 to 4 minute experiences. And then when I have a little bit more of time, I'll play Call of Duty Warzone with my friends, but that's purely a social aspect. If I've got like 30 minutes to an hour, I'll quickly go on and we'll have a run of Warzone. And then if I actually have real time to game, it's Ghost of Yotai, which I've been trying to play properly since Christmas and have failed miserably. But so yeah, like I have like different levels based on the time allocation I have. And as Nuno said, the more time I spend making games, the less time I actually have to play games. And it's the most frustrating quandary of gaming existence, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, and I would just to add, like Nuno and Kate and John, you've all kind of made this point, right? Like Kate, you're saying about even building games without screens now, and this is why I've like played so much more like tabletop, even like D&D or Magic the Gathering or just board games nights, just to like break from the screen, which always makes my friends laugh because I'm like, yeah, can we just play like less video games? They're like, you are like the video games guy. What's going on here? So I hear you. It's also just a note. I think last time when we recorded our last episode, John, I remember you just posted your Mew. You opened a Mew card and you put it on LinkedIn. You were that excited about it. That made me
Oh,
chuckle.
yeah. Look, guys, I'll be honest with you. I've probably spent over €1,000 on that game. Like I
Yeah.
am like I'm super into it, man. I've got there must have had like 15 different sets that have come out, and I've got every card of every set. And yeah, I'm just like, super geek when it comes to this stuff, man. Like Pokemon was like when I was like 13, Pokemon hit the UK, and it kind of changed my life a little bit, So I'm still heavily addicted now. My kids love it. I love playing it with my kids, and yeah, so part of me.
Nice. I'm just wondering if that even puts you in the whale category or whether that's just the average amount that people are playing.
I actually don't think I'm in the world category for
No.
Pokemon, man. It's biggest IP in the world,
Yeah,
So
good point. And hey, Kim, how about you? What are you playing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel you guys saying that, yeah, you're making games and then you don't really have that much time to play games anymore. I guess that applies to just being adult. Like you had much more time when you were in high school or college or whatever. But I have been postponing of playing EVE Online for like I played it last time like 9 years ago, and then last summer I decided like okay, I do want to play it, so fuck it. You might beat that. I will start playing it again after 9 years. So I started that like last summer. I've been playing it almost every single day after that, like at least doing the dailies and everything. Uh, about being kind of like spending money in games. it's 3 figures so far, so not in the thousands yet, but they are monetizing it really, really well. I have to hand that to CCP. But that's what I've been playing mostly besides our own games. We make so-so games, hence the company name is So-So First. Our game Nexus Station has been in early access for a year, so I, of course, play that a lot myself as well. But then board games, I know that you guys, some of you have like maybe a bit younger kids. Mine are already like in their mid-20s. There's kind of like this kind of like portrait theory. So I bought Hero Quest for my family like a couple,
Cool.
Yeah.
and we played it like 4 times. And after that, I bought the Warhammer Fantasy RPG, pen and paper RPG, and we've been playing that a bit as well. But now that I started EVE Online, I haven't been able to kind of like game master that anymore. But yeah, you should play games. But yeah, that's what I've been playing.
Yeah, my dream is to play Dungeons and Dragons with my kids. They're just a bit too young, but we'll get there. So,
but Warhammer is it's
yeah, nice. Well, yeah, go on, Kate. Yeah. Mm. Yes. Yes. Let's go. That is the dream. That is the dream, Kate. Like you're just living that dream. I love it.
Yeah,
that's
that's really good. You have a partner who also plays games. I mean, that's really good as well. My wife is just the same. We played the first Halo. We played through together, like having a wine and playing Halo. Yeah,
that's
Yeah,
cool.
Tomb Raider during lockdown. Me and my wife would double up on Tomb Raider whilst drinking. It was good times.
so shout out to the spouses as well if they ever see this.
You know what? My wife also likes to play video games. But where I think I went wrong was I was like, "Hey, let's play Overcooked," and then like I think I fried her brain a bit with that. And then I was like, "Dad, don't worry, I've got a really good one for you next. It's called Cuphead. Let's play that." Notoriously one of the hardest co-op platformers around. And then I don't know. I need to bring her back with something else.
Astrobot, get her into Astrobot. That is
Astrobot,
the
that's a
most
good
perfectly
idea.
designed, most perfectly balanced team. Just turn-based. Like, yeah, it's awesome to play.
Overrated. Did not deserve Game of the Year. I'm
I may
sorry.
close my
I have
laptop.
massive problems with this. Massive problems. We should move on before I get onto
I'm going to make you stay behind and debate that with you.
You can imagine the headlines now. CEO John Wright hates Astrobot.
Overrated, man. It should not have got Game of the Year. I'm telling you that now.
I was just going to say, I'm moving on slightly.
Move on.
No, all opinions are valid. It's totally fine. Also, I was meant to say, Kim, you can say fuck it on this podcast as much as you like. So I just thought I'd say, all F-bombs welcome.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome. Yeah.
And I was going to say, I recently formed a band, kind of, just as a metal band with my friends in the spare time. And I kept, they were like, oh, I wonder what we should call it. And I just secretly dropped in like loads of gaming, terms and things that they hadn't heard of. And they quite liked the name Sniper Wolf, which is one of the bosses from Metal Gear Solid. And they're like, oh, that's cool. That's a cool name. I was like, all right, but actually go back and play Metal Gear Solid now. So to have a bit more context on it. So that's why I'm playing the original one from PS1, the remaster.
Mantis.
Yeah. Well, I thought Psycho Mantis might be a bit too on the nose, so I went with another one there. But all right, so we should probably talk about work-related things now. Well, I say work-related things. Video games are work-related, but your roles more specifically. So I think a good place to start would be, so you all have the title CEO, but I'd love to know what you think the definition of that job would be. So starting with Kate, like how would you describe your role at the moment?
So I think I'm actually sort of career-wise, OO has been my title for like the last 10, 15 years. So this is my first time taking the CEO title. And I think I was actually really intimidated to take that role because I think that I always perceived a CEO as somebody, you've got a big vision you've got a big idea, whether it's a game or a product or where, you've got a reason that you've started the company. I liked COO because it was all about, somebody gives you a target to run towards and then it's like, well, how are we going to get there and executing it? And I'm really good with a brief and I really love doing that. And I think I thought like, I don't have, I'm not good with a blank piece of paper. And actually how this ended up coming about was there was a team of people one of which I was an old colleague and who I'd worked with, and they wanted somebody. It was basically an opportunity to start a business, and they wanted somebody to run it and reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested. So I kind of thought, fuck it. And it was an opportunity to try doing it. And I think so I've been through a big transition in the first year of the company of actually really understanding what the difference between the COO role and CEO role was. And to be honest, I think big thing I realized was actually I was a little naive that it's always a group effort. It isn't necessarily just about, there's this idea of this shining white knight that is leading from the front and makes all the decisions and kind of everything, the buck stops with them. It's, it still absolutely feels like a team effort, which has been really refreshing. And it didn't feel like, I think definitely, somebody needs to be, ultimately the buck needs to stop with them and needs to be the person that kind of decisions are fed through. So there is like a coherent vision, but it certainly wasn't what I expected in this idea of like just sitting in an isolated room on your own, being like, I've got to make every decision all on my own. Having a good team around me has really, really helped with that. I think the biggest thing like day to day, it's a lot of admin. I think that is a major thing, especially for a really small indie like us. There's only 4 of us in the company. There's a lot of the kind of responsibilities are things like, making sure we're all aligned and we've got a strategy and that everybody's on board with that, constantly reviewing and refining that is. So I think that the biggest thing is like zooming in and out of actually, what's happening day to day, making sure that that's being executed and, in line with like whatever our strategy is. And also zooming out and looking at the big picture regularly, at different times of the year. And making sure that we're really proactive in sort of, checking on team vibe. And we're 100% remote as a team. So that can, having to, the last couple of, probably the last 5 years, I've been working with remote teams. So thankfully, it just was one of those great moments where all of that experience sort of came in use. So it really has, a lot of tactics and kind of strategies for doing that. But, making sure that everyone's okay, even though we're all co-founders and we're equally sharing the business together. But obviously it's still my job to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And if there are disagreements, that we can resolve that. It's what we do is so subjective, even when you're talking about strategy or whether you're talking about, creativeness, which is why I think it is really good to have one person that can kind of like bridge all of those different perspectives. And yeah, the last thing in the most common thing I'm probably doing at the moment is things like sorting out the VAT return, sorting out your corporation tax, making sure, just like getting BFI accreditation, all of those kinds of stuff. It's a lot of administration, filling in forms for funding, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty wide ranging. And I think, luckily, I've actually ADHD. It turns out that's actually a really good like CEOs and like COOs because you're doing a little bit of everything all day long. There's loads of variety, which makes it awesome.
Yeah, brilliant. And how big's your company, Kate, at the moment?
We are only 4 people, so we are tiny, especially compared to you guys. We also work with we're 4 people as like permanent members of the team, and we work with contractors. It's definitely going to be part of our model. Is very much having a good contractor network, and yeah, something I will talk about till I come from an agency background where freelance and contract is just part of the industry. It's a really good, it's considered a really well respected part of the industry. You've got really good. Some people spend their whole life being contractors. My bad. And there's an amazing talent pool out there. And I think there's obviously pros and cons to it. There's things you have to watch out for, but that's definitely part of our model.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that, Kate. And like I said, I love the variety, but also it's like that's why I asked in terms of the company size. That I think that's very much the nature of it. Nuno, your company is obviously within games, but quite a bit different. Around 20 people, but also B2C tooling, right? And it's a platform. So how would you describe your role then? Any similarities to Kate, or is that quite a bit different?
Yeah, quite some similarities, especially with zooming in and zooming out, big perspective, but then getting into the details as well. But also some differences because I think how I took to starting the company has actually been more of a um, technology path rather than a games path, since it's not content, it's a tech platform. And so it was a little bit more of a, hey, here's the vision. This is where the industry is going. This is like, let's get some angel round of funding, to then get the team to then build the products, more of a tech path. But we have a lot of games DNA in the team. Lots of people that come from Rec Room, VR Chat, and Snapchat, and Epic Games, and lots of games companies, but also a lot of generative AI and tech background. And so, how my role has evolved has actually depended on the stage of the company. And so, it's like a chief do everything officer in the beginning because there's no one else to do anything. Also, especially because I'm a solo founder. And so, it just start you have to incorporate, and then you need to speak with lawyers, and then accountants, and then you need to have a bank, and like, oh, now you need to recruit people, and how do you create a product, all the things. But eventually, and fundraising. And eventually, once you actually get to a certain stage, you're actually able to trust and delegate some functions to people so that you're actually able to scale yourself and able to hire people that are hopefully much better than you at certain specific areas. And then you just let them carry over while you're focusing on the direction. That's what has been happening so far. So now we have world-class people on engineering, on design. I have someone that helps me with like operations. Steph is brilliant, and HR. And so now I don't need to deal with as much admin as I did before. And so the role changes and evolves, but it doesn't. Something that never changes is the setting the vision and making sure that everyone is aligned on where we're going and what we're about to do and what's important. So yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like, your background is from software engineering, programming, which I wish I had some data on like what the most common backgrounds for going into a CEO or founder role, but I feel like programming is probably one of the in the minority, I would say. So how have you found that all of that like technical, all those technical skills has influenced like your role now? Do you feel like you're out of all of the can do everything, do you try and still stay technical, or do you genuinely just have to be across the whole business?
Well, I still code a lot. I mean, not as much as I would like or as I did, but I'm still coding, especially now with generative AI. It's just unbelievable. I can just fire agents left and right. And because I know code, I know if they're doing something correct or not. And so I can actually get and churn through a lot of um, features in the product and bug fixes that because I have the context, right, with my user and where the company is going and what the team is working on and like what's needed, like I can make very targeted changes with generative AI that I couldn't before. So being technical is helpful in that regard, but much broader than that is actually helpful in terms of like trade-offs and like how you architect the company itself, like the machine that builds the machine, like almost everything can be seen through that lens. And I think that's something that is useful as well, is just having different lenses through which to view things. Like biologists see things through evolution, and um, there are different categories of people that see things through different lenses, and engineers like to see things through trade-offs. And so I think it's a helpful lens through which to construct a company itself. So it's been helpful. And also the learning mindset. So constantly learning, constantly evolving, because that's one of the core requirements of being a CEO, I think, is that everything is constantly shifting. So you just constantly need to adapt and learn. And so being an engineer actually primes you to be able to do that, or at least it did for me. So those are some things that have actually been very helpful.
Yeah, great. And I love the contrast already in these. It's like Kate's co-founded by a team with no CTO, and you're a solo founder coming from an engineering background. Yeah, brilliant. John, how would you describe what you do on a day-to-day, or just the role in general?
Yeah, I mean, just to give a bit of context, we're a studio of around 30 people, and I am an inherited CEO. I did not found the business. I became CEO of a company that's been live for 17 years last year. So again, we're a long-standing game studio. So again, there's a big difference. What I've realized is there's a big difference between building a team and inheriting a team, and how you actually deal with that is very different compared to one or the other. But that's not the question. I think for me, and we'll go into that probably later, Joe, I imagine. But for me, it's chief accountability officer. It's not executive. It's I'm accountable. There is no one else. It is very much and I think there's three clear pillars in my opinion, guys. One is being accountable for strategy. Okay. So this is again direction of the business, ensuring that what we're building for the future makes sense, that we're going to grow and we're going to strive and we're going to, everyone is going to be on the same page and be happy about what we're doing. The second, and obviously my background before I got into games 15 years ago I was a chartered accountant. So the finance aspects, P&Ls, balance sheets, OPEX, raising money, ensuring that we are cash flow positive and we are positive EBITDA. That is, very, very, that's the pillar number 2. And that is the one where I think a lot of studios lack, to be completely honest. And I think having more financial competence in studios is very important in this day and age. And then the third one is really the firefighting aspect. Okay. And this is on a daily basis, shit happens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And every day, without fail, 4 or 5 times a day, someone's calling me because something has gone wrong. And it's ultimately down to me to make the best decision, best gut call, best judgment call I can, utilizing the team around me, right? Like I'll always ask for the leadership's input on stuff, but there is just a certain point where people don't feel comfortable about making decisions, Joe. And the buck stops with somewhere, and you as a CEO has to be that person. Okay. So you have to make hard decisions. And sometimes probably the hardest one is balancing up what's best for the business versus what's best for the team. And not all the times they align.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, thanks for that. And we're gonna get also I was thinking we're gonna get into like how you got into your roles, but already so far we had like Kate saying she came from like operational, like COO, like that track, and then Nuno from engineering, John from accountancy way back. So Kim, how would you describe your role? And I don't know, are there any backgrounds there that are similar, or are you come from a fourth unique background here?
Well, I mean, my own kind of like discipline in games is game designer. So I love design aspects of games. That comes from, well, I can't code, I can't draw stick figures, so design for me. But I mean, yeah, without going into if this comes up later in the session, but kind of like I have no official kind of like education because back in my day there was no schools for kind of like game industry schools like game development and stuff like that. But I'm one of the 2 founders of Social First, and I have been around the block a few times, so this was my 3rd game company and 5th company in general that I founded. So I was smart enough that my founding partner Mikko, he took the administrative role, so he's doing all the boring and like unfortunate stuff, kind of like that. But I'm more kind of like I'm also creative director. I'm the kind of like also kind of like leading the team and stuff like that. So I think that being a CEO in general is very much kind of like it doesn't differ that much like industry from industry. I think it differs mostly like what stage your company is or what kind of is it like 4 people like with Kate or 30 people with John. We are 10, 12 people right now. So I still kind of like do a lot of design as well. But as companies grow, as team sizes grow, then the CEO becomes, I would say, more and more in the administrative role, leadership role. And yeah, as John said, there's always some you said that we can curse that there's always some shit going on. Like every single day, something happens, and you have to kind of like be there, put out the fires, kind of like reassure the team that we can handle this and all of that. But also kind of like, and again, this kind of like goes into what stage your company is at. As Nuno mentioned, also first, my company, we're still a startup. Being a CEO is also a lot of kind of like, if you're raising funds, then you're traveling around the world, pitching to investors, do all of that. And that, of course, is like days and weeks away from the office and away from the team. Where we don't have an office, we are like Kate's company, we are like totally work from home, but still it's like time away from your normal CEO duties. But I'd say that it's, especially in startups, you have to have more than one hat, maybe two hats, three hats, four hats. Then also, as Nuno mentioned, then you want to hire people who are best at what they do, be it like programmer or marketing or whatever, so that you as a CEO can kind of like give those reins to other people as the company grows.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that, Kim. So it sounds like from the four of you, all different businesses at different stages, inherited, founded, all and four different backgrounds: programming, design, operations, and finance. But still, I think the common thread is that you are uh, owning the success of the entire business, or at least you have scope across that. So accountability, definitely, John, and then just being able to wear various hats to cover all areas seems like a common theme. Yeah, yeah. There you go.
I have a thing
um,
for shoes, mate. A thing for shoes. It's a disease, honestly.
um, yeah. Well, to be honest, just they look lovely. So they don't look very well worn, but they do look good. So I have to say.
They're
Um,
definitely warm. Definitely warm. Yeah.
okay, cool,
It's
cool.
it's a whole wall. Look, it's a whole wall. It goes all the way
There you
across.
go. Yes. Uh,
Uh,
yeah, something that you should know about John: loves rugby, video games, and Nike shoes. So yeah, brilliant. But hey, Kim, yeah, Kim, going back to you then. So say if someone's listening to this episode and they're thinking, I want to be a CEO of a games business one day, just like the four people on this podcast. What advice would you have for them? And I guess both from the positive and the negative, like what like constructive advice would you have, and like things they proactively should do, and anything perhaps on the negative, anything they should avoid, or even like can anybody be a CEO of a games company? What characteristics or what things should they be interested in that could be like, oh, actually, I would make a good CEO? So that was a very long question in one, but what advice would you give to someone who wants to be a CEO?
Well, I would say like if you want to be a CEO, there are certain things that you have to do. I mean, you have to be able to uh, talk to people, be out there. Not meaning like you have to be a public speaker, but I mean, even if you're like offsite company, you still have to kind of like lead the discussion and have the weekly meetings and whatnot. So you can't be too kind of like turned inwards. You have to be outgoing person in that sense, because we are dealing with people. I mean, leading company is also leading people in that company. And again, it doesn't really matter if it's like games or I don't know pharmaceuticals or whatever. You're still dealing with people. But also, kind of like what John mentioned earlier, you have to be aware as a CEO, if you want to be one, that there are financial realities included as well. So I often go to the local university, the game studies track, to kind of like speak some like hard truths for the first like year students there. And people often want to get into games because they like games. And well, we already established that when you do games, you don't have the time to play games anymore that much. But I mean, it's some kind of like ice cream is nice to eat if you like ice cream, but it's not necessarily the nice to make ice cream every day. So it is also work, and you have to kind of like approach it from that aspect as well. And if it's not a hobby, then you have to take into account the financial realities. I mean, you have to have if you want to have professionals, you have to pay them. You have to be able to see, okay, we have runway for 6 months, 12 months, we are break even, all of that. So, but then if you don't want to do that, then you can make games for a hobby, for example. Same as if you want to, I don't know, play in a punk band, you can play that, do gigs on the side. But if you want to kind of like have a professional career as a musician, then the bar is kind of higher. But also, I would say that connections matter. You have to, and again, this goes to the outgoing personality. So you have to be kind of like creating your network. You have to meet people. You have to know people. Don't be an asshole, because reputation goes a long way. And for example, I mean, if I assume John here had some connections that he got hired as a CEO, not just because he's so handsome. So you have to have connections, otherwise, yeah, you don't get very far without connections.
Yeah,
I'm a
go on, sorry, go on, John.
co-investor. Yeah, basically, I'm a co-investor in another studio of one of the board members of Turborilla, and so that was my thing. So yeah,
Nice.
this is it.
So I just always assumed it was because you were so handsome. That's how you got that role. But
Not only, I said
Yeah.
not only.
oh, okay, yeah, okay,
Not only.
Yeah. yeah, great. Yeah, Kim, those are loads of good points in there, but one that just like stuck out in my mind is the point which feels quite obvious about the ability to run a business. The amount of times, especially since being at Play Ventures the last just over 2 years or so, the amount of people that I speak to that are thinking about starting their own studios or starting their own games businesses, and really is a case of like that just sounds like a hobby project. I don't think they've really
Mhm.
factored into the like making a business from it. And also sometimes it feels like there's almost this I can't think of the best way to phrase it other than like the dirtier side of like, oh no, you should be making games for the love of the art or the passion or something. It's like, okay, like, you know, salaries don't get paid from necessarily from that. And also having someone who can like own those hard decisions about how the business is going to not just be here tomorrow or next month, but long into the future and be a successful games company. So glad you highlighted that. John, what anything to add on to Kim in terms of like advice you'd give to someone who's like, I want to be a game CEO, or any other points there?
Yeah, look, I think Kim said a lot of the stuff that I normally say, guys. I think I come from the dirty part, as Joe put it, right? Like again, I come from more of a corporate background, more of a financial background. You know, for the last 15 years, I've been in games. I started off in performance marketing, which is very numbers driven, and then I worked through to becoming like, you know, VP operation, COO type characters like Kate, and then this is my first CEO role, so I've always been on the more operational side of the business. But yeah, look, one vital skill, in my opinion, is you need to be able to negotiate, because you're closing deals, you're having agreements. You know, there's certain technologies that cost X amount of money, and if you are unable to, as Kim said, you know, like basically talk to people and be out there and whatever else, you're going to be in a bad position, man. You know, but you need to be able to negotiate and do the best for your business and have these hard conversations. And negotiation doesn't just mean like financially negotiating. It could be like getting someone to believe in something, like negotiating with them, you know, as to why this is important. Because quite frankly, a lot of the time people might be on a different page to you, and you have to, you know, negotiate with them and you know, explain to them why the way you're thinking is the best, you know, for this project, for them. Getting someone to change their mind is an extremely difficult thing, right? And quite frankly, you have to be able to do that, and that means you have to be able to have hard conversations with people, right? You can't just be the Mr. Nice Guy. You can't be telling everyone what they want to hear. You need to be very honest and very direct and say, okay, if something's not up to mark or someone's not delivering, or God, I mean, like I've managed hundreds of people in my career, but I've fired maybe 50, right? And firing people is extremely difficult. But what's the alternative, right? Like, what, you're going to let someone be toxic in a business and take root and everything else? And so, look, man, like the art of like the reason I got into games was because I have been a gamer since I was 5 years of age. I love nothing more than games. I've got tattoos all over my body of games, right? And it's part of who I am. It's seeped into my soul, you know? Like I came out of corporate finance and I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And that's what all I'll do is games for the rest of my life, right? But yeah, people need to understand it's more than the craft, more than the love of the art. Like you need to understand that this is a business. And guys, I'm going to write a book called The Business of Fun. And it's going to be about this exact subject, right? I've been talking about it for years, but I'm going to talk about the hard stuff in games that people need to know, even understanding legal. Like people don't understand contracts. Like how do you negotiate a publishing agreement where you as the developer are getting the best for yourselves if you don't understand the legal ramifications of certain clauses? And these are the things that people don't want to hear about now. But these are the things we need to teach about in gaming universities. Because yeah, if you go into this business, not even, you know, to be a founder, to be a CEO, to be a C-level, and you don't have the eye on the legal, the eye on the numbers, the eye on, you know, the operational parts, you're just setting yourself up for failure. So, and it's tough. People don't want to hear it, but it's the truth.
No, it's great. Brilliant advice. In fact, I actually just mentioned that to a university local to me. It's called Falmouth University, top in the UK for game design now. And I was like, brilliant. But exactly the point of why I love going to speak to students. You know, I'll give them a crash course in venture capital and games or something. But it's, you know, if they're like, oh, yeah, it's my dream to keep making games. It's like, you need to be able to make it into a business. Otherwise, you're just going to be in your bedroom building games. You can do that for free, like for the rest of your life. But turning it into something that is a business, yeah, I love that job. Hey, any advice that you would give to someone who is wanting to be a CEO?
I definitely would echo everything Kim and John have just said. I think that fundamentally for me is really thinking about why you want to either be a CEO or go into any leadership position. Because I think that, you know, there is a bit of a misconception of, oh, and just you get to have all this power and be in charge and make all the decisions. And, you know, I can do all those things that my old boss did badly or those kinds of things, you know, which are not awesome, but like that's not what it's about. You know, I think to be a CEO or to be any, you know, to found a business, like you have to care as much about the business side of stuff as you do the end product. And I think for me, that's where the perfect balance of output comes from, is like I care as much about how we make something, who we get to make it, why we're making it, the strategy behind it, what the business, you know, making it actually make money. And as I do about the actually how fun it is and what the user experience is like. All of those things are completely equal to me. And I think that's really, you know, often overlooked, you know, like, and I completely agree with what John was just saying about your kind of financial literacy and your legal literacy. Like there's a lot of those kind of skills that you're gonna have to learn a lot of that stuff. And if you don't really care or value that side of the business, then it's going to be a steep learning curve and you're probably not going to enjoy it very much. So I think that is absolutely key. I think also communication and as you know, it was well put earlier about, you know, having difficult conversations. I think sometimes that can sound like it's about, you know, negotiation or being, you know, quite aggressive. And it's not just about that. It's just about having difficult conversations that, you know, if you don't like confrontation and you don't like having to get those difficult conversations out of the way, in a compassionate way, if you struggle with that, like those are skills that are really worth, you know, investing in, because it does take conscious effort. It's not something that everybody is naturally, you know, brilliant at. And the more you do it and the more effort you put into developing those communication skills, the better you'll get at it and the better leader you'll be. Certainly, because every single thing you're going to do every day, whether you're negotiating a financial contract or you're trying to, you know, get everybody to agree on like a game design mechanic or, you know, a certain direction or whatever, it's all about communication and about making people feel heard and genuinely not just making them feel heard, you know, actually really listening to everybody. And I think particularly for us, because we really care about, you know, diversity in the workforce, so, you know, like the team that we're putting together and the output that we're making, we want it to, you know, we are trying to do things that are a little bit different. I know everybody says that, but, you know, we're actually, out of the 4 founders, 3 of them are women. And that side of things is really important to us as well. And I think that it's lucky that, you know, or by design, I should say, that I really care about all the process strategy side of stuff, because we are having to innovate just even how we work, how we go about doing business development. What works in one context doesn't necessarily work as easily for us. So you are going to have to be very, creatively thinking on your feet. And you can't just think about the product all the time. You have to have the business absolutely front of mind.
I love that.
I love that.
I love that. Thank you. I
thank you.
particularly love that point about you saying you have to be just as passionate about the product and actually what the business makes it as about like how it comes to be in the first place. So loving all
I am
aspects of the business.
I would say I am a complete spreadsheet and process nerd. I love that stuff. That's why I did operations for so long, is because I love refining and improving how we're doing stuff, because the better we are at how we work, and the more we can do with the resources we have, the more things that we can achieve. And there's nothing worse than when you play a game and you can see the process or the business strategy has fallen over and the game, is like under resourced, or you can I think when you're doing it every day, you can really see it in the end product. So I think that stuff is really, really important. And I think it's something I definitely was surprised when I first came into games, that there's a lot more focus at leadership level on the product and less on the business side of things. And that tends to just be like, oh yeah, that's HR, that's like, the legal or the finance team. There's not as much. I think it's much better, it has gotten better, over the last sort of 10 years, because the industry is now so hard and it's hard to make money, and, people have not had the choice to neglect that stuff. But in my experience, actually really focusing on that stuff and better integrating that stuff into the creative process actually makes for better, you get a better commercial output and you get a better quality output as well.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for that, Kate. And for those of you listening on audio, when Kate said that she loves being a spreadsheet nerd, Nuno was there with making an X sign with both arms up. So, but all leaning into your strengths, right, in this role. So, Nuno, anything to add to that? Like, I know you've had 3 answers already, but anything to add to any advice to someone looking to be a CEO, or perhaps even CEO and founder in this case?
Thanks for putting me in the tough spot, Joe. Those are tough acts to follow.
You're welcome. You're most welcome.
But something that Kate mentioned about things depending on context resonated with me, because something I wanted to preface was that, like, I'm very wary of giving advice like willy-nilly, very broadly, because sometimes advice that you can give in one context, in another context, you give the exact opposite advice. And so my most general advice would be wary of general advice and think for yourself. But but in order to try and be helpful, some of the things that have been helpful for me in my journey are, for example, trying to learn from people that are a few steps ahead from you. And I think of Bruce Grove, who you've had on your podcast before. And,
Yeah.
he was my CEO at Polystream. I was the first engineer hired at Polystream, which was this Silicon Valley style startup, but in the UK. And we raised 15 million from Series A. So I got to see up close the journey. And that's where I started branching out from engineering and learning, fundraising and marketing and sales, and very close to Bruce. Some of the things that I've noticed him doing was like, hey, he was just changing the water and, mopping the floors. And I'm like, why is the CEO doing this? This doesn't make any sense. And that's when I realized, like, hey, for me to be able to create the product, he is creating the environment that allows me to do my best work. And that's what he was doing, making sure that the whole team had a great environment, that the company was well positioned in the world that was constantly changing. And that was like very enlightening and very inspirational. So I started going to him and going like, hey, Bruce, can I take you out to lunch? Can we go for, once every couple of weeks or so? I also didn't want to spend a lot of his time. But something that I noticed was not just learning from him, but also like, hey, can I learn from him if one day I would like to have my own company? He's already a few steps ahead, but is not an exited founder, right? Like, it's not like he's 20 years in this company, already forgot what it's like. Like, he's going through it. And so he's a few steps ahead. And I think those kinds of people are really good to have in your corner so that you can learn from them. And that speaks to the someone made this point about having genuine relationships, and connections, and it just makes like a whole difference when you can lean on people, especially being a solo founder, right? Like if I didn't have a whole tribe and network with me, there's no way that I would be able to do this. And it's not just the team; it's people that believe in you, that eventually become investors, your partners, like your friends, right? Like you need emotional support to regulate yourself. Um, and another point I would make is just increasing your surface area for luck. There's a point that Kim made about being a little bit more extroverted and not just being inside. Like, how is luck going to come to you if you don't leave the couch? Like, you need to put yourself in that conference, speaking at that panel. There are certain things that you can do to just increase the probability that luck might find you. And you got to think a little bit, you got to reflect, take time, speak with people, put yourself out there to make sure that you put yourself and your company in the best position. Because sometimes people don't realize how much like companies that now everyone has heard of have come to just dying. And yes, there's some, survivorship bias for sure, but every single company has gone through multiple rounds of we're about to die, and someone did something or someone was very kind, and just something happened and the company was saved. And that's just luck, right? But luck, you can influence it, right? And so it's thinking about what you can do to actually make that happen. And just the value of knowing yourself, like, and your gut feeling and understanding yourself, and because so much of it is intuition and decision making. And when the buck stops with you and you have to make calls and you have to make hard decisions, then you need to really know yourself and why you're making those decisions and which decisions have been good in the past, so that you can continue to make good decisions in the future. And that's all about, reflection, self-awareness. There's a lot of inner work that needs to come as well. And so I think people that want to become CEOs need to be prepared that there's a lot of work that is invisible that needs to also happen at the same time as the work itself, to make sure that the company has a good chance of success.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that, Nuno. I especially love that point about luck as well. I think a lot of people look at whoever these startups that get funded. Oh, they're so lucky. It's like, oh no, if you could only see the amount of work Nuno is doing every single day to make that land. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, thanks for that advice. And yes, Bruce Grove is a lovely person and also incredibly smart. So great call out there. We are running up to the end of the episode, but there is one last question I would love to ask you all. So I wonder if you can condense an answer here before we get to the end bit. But I would love to know, how are you defining success in this role? Because you've all given a variety of answers about how you got into the position, what your current role is, everything else. But how do you know if you're doing a good job? Even right? Is it purely just gut feel, finger in the wind, or are there some really quantified things that you're looking at, or is it a blend of both? We'll go background again. So Nuno, I don't want to rush you too much, but if you can give a condensed answer, how do you define success in your role?
Sure. I go back to Bruce since it's on my mind, and I asked him this question when I was at Polystream. I'm like, hey, what does success mean to you at Polystream, right? And bear in mind, I was just a senior engineer at the time. This was like more than 10 years ago. And the answer he gave surprised me a lot. He basically said, hey, the people that are here at Polystream, if they go on to do even more and better things, like if they go on out of Polystream having a really good background in order to then go on to do the things that they want to do afterwards, that's success to me. And I'm like, wow. Is not talking about, valuations, is not talking about the product taking over the market. He's talking about the people and their futures. And that was very inspiring for me. And so I also like that his answer spoke about the long term, not the short term. And so that's how I'm going to define success for Nilo itself, is on the long term. And it's on that basis of what the people are able to do with what they learn in Nilo.
Very cool. I like that a lot. How about you, Kate?
I think when we founded Studio Heft, the reason it's called Heft is because we all, we're a bunch of seasoned creatives that wanted to make work that we believed in. And I think my personal ambition with it is to be able to build sustainable creative careers for everybody who comes through our doors. And hopefully we can grow that. I have some very lofty ambitions of what we were going to do in the long term. But it is probably long term. It's a 5-year vision more than like a 1-year vision. And so for me, keeping the doors open, the lights on, making sure that we've got enough of a financial return that we can invest in our own work, creating our own IP. That's really, will be the big mark of success. Also making sure that we're all really, really proud of every single thing that we put out, whether it's small scale, whether it's big scale. We want it to be not just like level of polish, but we want the work to actually, whether it says something or it just, heft is specifically the word that we kept using because I can't think of a better word to describe a kind of amorphous, vague thing of just something that just has work with weight. That is really what we're about. So I think if in 5 years' time we've managed to still be here and we've managed to grow the team and we've put out work that we really believe in, like I would be over the moon. That would be absolutely incredible. If we can also establish an amazing physical location that is the House of Heft that people can, because we're actually, some of our team is in the Netherlands. We're, not just based in the UK, having a hub that everyone can come back to, that would be a really lofty long-term goal. If anyone wants to give us loads of money that we can be able to do that, that would be amazing. But that's really what our goal is across all platforms. And, in lots of, we were also doing things like immersive experiences as well. So it's not just going to be sort of screen-based stuff. As long as, we want to keep doing it as long as we can get away with it.
Brilliant. Yeah, I like that. John, how's success
Top to the right, baby. Top to the right.
Yeah, I knew you'd say that for some reason.
That's what
yeah.
So give me a second. I've been dying to say that. So, but no, on a serious note, I think my job as again, I'm an inherited CEO, right? Like I entered into the position after 16 years of the company's consolidate. So my job first and foremost is to ensure that the business is moving forward in the right trajectory, and success is giving me the ability to keep people's security. Like I want the company to grow. I want us to be proud of what we do, but I want us to grow to ensure that all of the employees that I'm responsible for are in a safe and happy position. That's I was very fortunate to work with David Darling, who's the founder of Quali and Codemasters, and his vision was always around to put our games into the world, but in the hands of the world's players. And his thing was all about getting the games played by as many people as possible. And I always loved that. But ultimately, for me right now, success looks like giving people stability and security, and ensuring that people are safe in this job that they love, and looking after people in that way.
Yeah, and the reason why I said I knew you would say that, but it's because like you said, you're an inherited CEO, and you've come in to like make the business as successful as possible. So that's what I was not surprised. Up and to the right, but yeah.
Yeah, look, I've got a board, Joe. Like people think CEOs is the top. It's not. When you've got a board, everything changes. I have to answer to them, and if they tell me they want to see a EBITDA double year over year, that's what I need to do, right?
Yeah, fair. And Kim, how would you define success in your role? Anything different or anything to add?
Well, I mean, I'm of course all about 50xing the investment money that we got from our investors, and that's the only thing. No, but that's kind of like, but that gives the kind of like, because success can mean different things. I mean, if you think from financial point of view, you do want to get the kind of growth trajectory that, especially if you are a company that runs on investment money as we do as a play portfolio company. Nuno had A16Z and Supercells, then those kind of like give you some success factors that you aim for. But it might be a bit different personally, for example. But what Kate said, kind of like keeping the lights on and all of that, success for me personally is to be able to continue making games as a living, as my profession. That means some extent of financial success, but also I want to have a good time making those games with people I enjoy making them with. Because yeah, in the end of the day, I think all of us here we love games. That's why we are making them, and yeah, you need financial success to be able to do that, but you also want to make fun games and have fun doing it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So we're now closing out at the end of the episode, and I was thinking I always bookmark with the same questions, but considering that I said we'd wrap up quickly from here, I'd love just almost like a one sentence answer to this, if you can, one or two, but give or take. But I always ask everyone, what's your favorite interview question? And I do allow enough time to go in depth and explain it. But yeah, if you could just give me your favorite interview question and explain why you love it, that'd be great. And I'm going to start with John.
Where will you be in 5 years?
Yeah. And what?
That's like the most. That is the most bullshit question in the history of interview questions. Sorry, I just needed to do something.
No, sorry. I was like, oh wow, one of those. Okay.
No. I mean, my one always is tell me something. Tell me a situation where you had to overcome adversity. Like, give me an example of where you had a bad situation, and you've overcome it, and how did you come up with that solution? So, yeah, trying to understand how people do troubleshooting and getting over problems.
Brilliant. Kate, do you have a favorite interview question? Oh, just a second. Sorry, I accidentally on mute. Kate, do you have a favorite interview question?
Normally, I would say I'd ask about the future, and I do actually like the 5 years thing because it just gives you an insight into how they think about the future career and what their plans are. This might be a bit like it sounds a bit not controversial, but one thing that you would change about the industry, I think I'd be really interested in what sort of insight you would get, what people focus on. It just tells you a little bit about their perspective of making games and why they're here and what they want to achieve. So I find a really interesting thing to ask people.
Yeah, that's great. I haven't heard that one before. Nuno, do you have a favorite interview question? I assume so, considering you've built the company to 20 people now. So, any particular favorites?
I have quite a few, but one that I think is interesting is among the people you've worked with, who do you admire and why? And for example, why I like this is if you had asked me that question, you would get me telling some of the stories I just told about Bruce, which would tell you about my values, right? So I like that.
Very cool. I like that a lot. And Kim, how about you?
Well, I'll tell you my favorite key takeaway from one GDC session I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. It was two older gentlemen who they had background in movies, in Hollywood, and then in games. And the key takeaway from their 45-minute session was that nobody in the industry knows anything. So nobody knows like what is the next hit game. Nobody knows what is the next big platform or rising platform. So everybody's kind of winging it. You need to do your homework. You need to be thirst for knowledge, but it's not like everybody else has silver bullets and you are just fumbling around. Everybody's fumbling around.
Yeah. Can confirm that anecdote. But hey, I just want to say to all of you, Nuno, Kate, John, Kim, thank you so much for all of you taking your time today. I think anyone listening to this will have come away with tons of really invaluable advice and insights. So I really appreciate it. And I'll see you all at a games conference soon, I'd imagine. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, man.
Great. Thanks, guys.